Hey YouTube, it's your boy, the Big Mac, the Caleb Mac. So this is the video I promised. It was meant to go earlier. Unfortunately, I had some technical issues and some other things come up, and so it's coming out late today, but it is coming out today. Got a little bit better lighting set up. Okay, so now I don't look like some creepy shadow creature. I know it's a very artistic and intentional contrast. Not really. Anyway, so this video I want to talk a bit about mental health, about suicide of prevention and awareness. And this is something that honestly I could go on for some time about. This is something that I could very easily try to adjust this to where it's a little more centered. Here we go. The lighting's as good as it's going to get for this right now until I get me a proper camera rig and some better lighting. On the to-do list, but kind of lower down, I got some other things that have taken priority here. So, those of you who recall, about 7-8 months back, I guess it was, almost 8 months back now, my older cousin took his own life, and it kind of was very unexpected and sudden. It hit different than other deaths that I've experienced in the past in my life, friends and family that have gone on before me. And it really, for me personally, and I'm not trying to make it all about me, because obviously he and his family and such, there was a lot of suffering and pain in that, still is to an extent. But for me personally, it was just like, geez, I go through a period of time where it's just one thing after another. It's like I can't go more than 90 days before some major catastrophe befalls. And it's just like, even though this wasn't a direct impact on my life specifically, it hit close enough that it was just sucked the wind out of my sails. It's part of the reason why I took some time off. It ended up being longer than I meant for it to be. I was just going to take about 6-8 weeks off of doing stuff on YouTube and other things and just try to recenter myself. It ended up taking a lot longer. For those of you who do know me well enough in person, or you've watched any of my videos or any of my blog posts or anything else like that, I have struggled with depression in the past. It has been a long time since I consistently struggled with thoughts of suicide. That was a problem I had when I was much younger, where that would happen. The last time I had that event, mental event, let us say, take place, was actually during my divorce. And it kind of freaked me out because it had been a decade or more probably since I had really had that thought occur to me and mull around, where it's like, life is pain, life is suffering, life sucks. I don't see a way out of this. I'm a burden. I'm useless. All these different things that you feel when you get depressive, or when you get, when you are struggling with life. All these different things that happen, all these things that can haunt you and can cause you problems. And people that have struggled with depression, I'm convinced that in a lot of instances, people that do end up taking their own lives, they are convinced they're being selfless because they're like, well, I'm just a burden, or I'm in the way, or I can't do anything right, or how can these people tolerate me? They don't fully think through the pain and suffering that those who remain will go through in their absence. And I'm not saying this to speak ill of the dead, those who have taken their own life and all these other problems, where it's like, I don't want that to be like a downer, or me looking down my nose at people like that. It's like, well, I overcame it, why can't you? No, not at all. I empathize completely with people that have struggled with depression in the past, or are currently struggling with depression. It was one of the things with my ex-wife that I noticed and I was aware of. And I tried very hard for most of our relationship, much of our marriage, to help her through that. But when it got to where I was carrying her and myself, it got to be too much, and I had my own problems that I had to get help with. I went to a therapist, I went to a counselor for some time to help deal with the grief of losing my father and other things that were bothering me. It's just like trying to work through these things and process them. Things that my wife at one point actually was very helpful in helping me with. She and I helped each other a lot with these things. But there came a point in our relationship due to other factors where there was a disconnect and we weren't able to do that anymore. And then I started seeing someone and getting help. And then shortly after she did as well. Unfortunately, we didn't go to therapy together. And it was something that I was very keen on doing, but she never committed to for whatever reason. And so it led to a greater, you're in my light, creature, go away. Go away. Go play with your stuff. Cats have always somehow managed to feature prominently, or at least indiscriminately, in my videos like this. Whatever. Due to a number of factors, things I won't really drag over and regurgitate here. If you want to know, you can read my blogs. More than enough of that there. She kept falling deeper and deeper into depression, was trying to look for answers and things, and that was part of what caused us to separate and divorce. Was she got in her mind certain things that were not beneficial to us continuing a relationship, while I was coming out of those things. And then by that point, we were just going in two different directions, and she was not willing to put in the work to find a middle ground. And to be fair, much as I wanted to do that, I wasn't. I was not yet in the place where I could put forth my best effort to do that as well. I mean, as Jocko Wilknick says, own your shit. And I own my shit in that I wasn't in a place to do that at that exact time. I wish I had been, and I certainly was working towards that with every effort and energy that I had. But I am slow to change. I don't change a lot, and when I do, it's very slow, and it's very gradual, and it's very methodical, because I'm not the kind of person who just changes things randomly or without purpose or impulsively. I like finding something that works. I like being reliable as a person. I like things that are reliable, and I like taking my time working through problems. The quick and easy fix is nice, but in my experience, it's not, statistically speaking, the best method. And to that end, specifically in regards to suicide, it is a solution to your problems, but it's a very permanent solution to, in most circumstances, are temporary problems. I remember distinctly my pistol was on the bedside table, and I realized just the gravity of what was going on, and I felt like such a complete utter failure, that my marriage had failed, it was all my fault, that I had completely dropped the ball, and that, what am I supposed to do with the rest of my life now? I've spent the last 5, 6, 7 years almost working towards having a life with this person and growing old together and all the things that I wanted to do, and now it just seemed like it had all been ripped away from me, and all I was left with was just damage and debris in its wake, just wreckage. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't know what to do. I feel useless. I feel like a failure. I feel like everything that I've gone through has been for nothing. And that I was just sucking the life out of my friends and my family. I felt like I had sucked the life out of my wife at the time. The divorce wasn't finalized yet. And I remember I was sitting on the edge of the bed. It was a day off. I was sitting on the edge of the bed. I was just so burned up with it all. I mean, I never touched the firearm, but my pistol was sitting there, and I could hear in my head, I could hear it racking. I could hear myself putting in the magazine, racking around a high velocity hollow point, pulling out the magazine, setting it to the side, sitting down in the bathtub, and eating a hollow point. as my last meal. Like I could hear all of it, and I'm a very audio person, like an auditory. I have a strong auditory bias, like music and sounds and rhythms and patterns. All of that fascinates me and always has, and it's something that is very much hardwired into who I am. And then with that, I have a very strong correlation to sounds and memories. And so for me to have this series of sounds playing through my mind, and the faint but specific visuals that were accompanying that, it's just like, it freaked me out. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And then I thought to myself, how selfish can I be? I've already gone through this period of being very much turned inward and being selfish. And look where it's gotten me now. Being selfish even more. Why would I double down? That's not the solution. Again, a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I thought of that. I'm like, this is not what I want to do. So I actually went over, picked the gun up, removed the magazine, cleared the chamber, made sure that was done. I put the magazines away. I took the gun. I took the slide off the frame, put that in the top of my closet, shut the door. And for the next 3 days, that's where my gun stayed while I processed and worked through it all. And then I came to a point where it's like, okay, I'm not going to kill myself. That's my personal story for that. In regards to suicide, there is a phenomenon that's been going on the last 10, almost 20 years now. Since somewhere around 2011, 2012, there'd been this trend that people had just started noticing. The CDC and others had noticed that married men or recently divorced men were killing themselves at an exponentially higher rate than others. Women, it's weird. Women are twice as likely to commit to attempt suicide as men, but they're only successful 1 out of 3 times, usually because the methodologies they use, take a lot of pills, slit their wrists, stick their head in the oven was the big one way back in the day for whatever reason, gas themselves when gas ovens were a big thing. They still are in some places, like rural areas. Electric isn't as popular in some places as it is in others. But, or park the car in the garage type thing, whatever it is. Those sorts of things, women were far more likely to attempt, statistically speaking, suicide, but men are like 5 times as successful. I saw the stats not long ago when I was looking up stuff to do this video, and unfortunately I'm not recalling it as clearly as I'd like, but it's something like women are twice as likely to attempt, but men are like 3 to 5 times more successful. Predominantly because what we do is we either jump off of something really high and go splat, or we blow our brains out, as those are statistically the 2 most effective methods to kill yourself, which is kind of terrible in its own way. Adjust this light here. That's a little better. Which is kind of horrible and sad in its own way. But the question as to why. Well, Jordan Peterson, of course, move your butt, get away from the lamp. Jordan Peterson has said, well, there's this kind of crisis for men. It's like they don't have a purpose. They don't understand what responsibility is. There's a social breakdown in what men are meant to do and who they're meant to be and such, because we're not passing on these values. Like, women figure out what their purpose or their goals or their desires are fairly easy. There's a social construct that helps support that. There's a biological foundation for that. It's like they're meant to nurture and grow things. They're meant to create things in that way. They take what's around them or what's given to them and they create something out of it. Whether it's literature or food or a home or to raise children or to contribute in some meaningful capacity to their community. For women, it seems to be less of a struggle to find their niche, as it were, or their niche, I guess. I've heard it pronounced both ways. I always say niche because it kind of looks like that when you read it, and I'm dyslexic, kind of, so their niche, their niche. It's easier for women to find that, it seems, than it is for men. Men have to figure that out, and then they have to commit to it. They have to find something to be responsible for, something that they can work towards to produce resources or to acquire resources towards another goal outside of themselves. We find that a lot of men that become very self-involved and narcissistic, they end up being pretty horrible by and large. They end up doing a lot of things that are monstrous when they become very self-involved. Ask me how I know. I went through a very short period of time prior to my divorce where I became very self-involved. I turned inward onto myself, and I was becoming very narcissistic in my behavior, and that was very damaging. Firstly, to me, and then that, of course, spilled over and became very damaging to the relationship between myself and my ex-wife. And the terrifying part in hindsight is that, looking back, I didn't even fully like, I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And then looking back in hindsight, it's terrifying how blind I was to those things, because it seems obvious now. It's like, well, I wasn't engaging with her the way I had been. I wasn't engaging with the world as I had been. I felt trapped, and I felt very tired and beat down and depressed. And then my father ended up in the hospital and died. It was just like the worst timing possible for me to start having mental health issues right before the holidays, right before my dad ends up in the hospital and passes, right before my ex-wife graduated college. Is like the worst possible timing. And it's because I'd become very more self-centered in my time and my intention. And looking back on that, that's probably one of the biggest regrets I have probably the last 10 years, is doing that, is being so utterly narrow-minded and inwardly focused to the point of harming first myself, but then also my ex-wife and our relationship. And there was fallout beyond just that relationship. There were other relationships that ended up being strained during that time. All but one of which now I've been able to repair or restore or make progress on undoing that damage now. It's taken time. It's taken effort. It's taken a lot of work. But the thing with suicide, and the thing that a lot of people don't seem to realize, is that this is far more common, these thoughts, these struggles, with people, not just men, but people in general, especially in today's society, it seems. It's far more common to realize. Now, there has been in recent years, and I appreciate the progress that's been made in this, a greater awareness and a greater notion towards how we can go about getting help to the people that need it, making it available, destigmatizing, because we all have our struggles. Everyone. It doesn't matter how popular or successful or accomplished you are or think you are or whatever. Everyone goes through those times where they have struggles. One actor I've followed for a bit now, a fellow Texan, Jared Padalecki. He was in a couple different movies and TV shows. He was in Supernatural, kind of the big thing he's known for. Also in the new TV show Walker, which is actually a pretty good show. I enjoyed, kind of a reboot of the original Walker TV show with Chuck Norris. He himself has spoken more than once. He's had those problems. He's had those struggles. He's been very open about it. And I think people that do that help lower the stigma of it. And so the thing I want to say, having said all of this, I don't want this to be a super long video, and it's already decently long. The thing I want to say is that in regards to these things, find help. Find someone who's willing to talk to you or listen. National Suicide Prevention Hotline is a thing. There's websites for that. There are forums. There's all sorts of places where you can find people willing to listen. And that's the big thing that I find with society right now that seems to be fostering this, is that we have all this communication capacity, right? Case in point, YouTube. Right here and now, I'm communicating with you, and you can communicate with me through the comments. Facebook, Twitter, everything. You can pick up a device. All right, here's my phone, and you can pick this up, and within 10 seconds or less, be speaking or communicating in some form or fashion with someone else anywhere in the world. And yet, for as powerful as this is, and as useful as this is, there's been a breakdown in the human connection there. One of the best things that you can do, go to the website, make a phone call, whatever. Once you've done that, the very next thing you need to do, in my personal opinion, from my experience, find someone you can talk to in person, face to face, like face-to-face conversation. There are nuances and subtleties that get lost in translation with like a video chat or just a YouTube video or a text message or an email or whatever. There's a lot that gets lost there, but there's a lot of nuances, and we need those as human beings. We evolved to read subtle clues and hints, and for whatever reason we've kind of nerfed ourselves the last 100 years or so by taking a lot of that out in our efforts to communicate further and more efficiently. And I'm not saying this to disparage technology. Technology is great, but it's a tool, and it's how you use it. And if you're not using it correctly, or if you're using a screwdriver to put a house together, and you might need a hammer and some pliers or something else as well, and you're neglecting those, you can put a house together with a screwdriver. It's not going to be as well done as if, say, you had a hammer and a saw and some pliers and some wrenches and some other stuff as well. There are multiple tools that you can use. Starting with one, making that first step, is the best thing you can do for yourself. The next thing you can do that's also equally important is to expand your tool set. All right? Talk to someone in person. Reach out, talk to someone on the phone. Tweet or Facebook or email someone that you think you can trust. And to people that would be on the receiving end of that, and I've been on the receiving end of that on a couple instances, it's been a while, but I have been. The best thing you can do is, even if you feel 100% overwhelmed and unequipped, just listen. Just say, okay, I'm listening. Tell me what's going on. That's the best thing you can do. If you're cool with your mental health and you're rolling along and fine, and you have that friend or that family member, or hell, even a stranger, and they reach out to you, and in essence what they're saying is, help me, I'm scared. The best thing you do is say, you know what? I'm here. If I can help, I will. If not, I will find someone who can. It's imperative that we look out for each other. It's imperative that we don't forget the old ways, where community was important, where people spent time with each other, where people spent time communicating, where people really tried to find some way they can, even if you don't like people, if you prefer to be alone or whatever, you can do something just by listening. Introverted people are great at listening, right? My ex-wife was a huge introvert, and one of the best things she did was ask questions and listen. That was something she was very good at. It's one of the reasons she and I got along very well, is because I love talking and I love asking questions. And she was always very concise, but she would always come up with an interesting or a thought-provoking or a meaningful question when we were having deep, meaningful discussions throughout most of our relationship. She could come up with some of the best questions, and it would just be so thought-provoking. And that's an important thing. Know when to ask questions and know when to be quiet. That's something I've had to work on, and I'm still not all that good at it, I think. I've heard rumors to the contrary from people who know me really well. I'm not convinced, but whatever. I'm inside my own head. I don't know any better. But when or if someone reaches out, listen. Ask them, okay, tell me what's going on. How can I understand this better? Listen. Be supportive. And don't be judgmental. A final note, just something to consider. I believe it's every 22 minutes, an American veteran takes their own life. And it's reaching pandemic levels, like more so than the Kung Fu flu or whatever. The COOF, as some call it, since YouTube doesn't like us saying the word or whatever, because it's misinformation. I'm not talking about that. But when you realize that right now the millennial generation as a whole, from the first wave millennials like myself, the elder millennials, to the second, third wave millennials, those who came after us, we are right now currently the largest by proportion demographic in America. We also are the largest. We have the largest membership, current and former, in the U.S. military compared to any other generation. And you realize that we are also a large portion of the veteran population. Not that I myself am a veteran, but many friends, family members, peers have been in the military that are in my demographic, my age bracket. My cousin, case in point, he was only 4 years older than me. He didn't even make it to his 40th birthday, and he was a veteran, and he struggled with stuff, and one day he just reached a point where he couldn't anymore, and he tried to get help. He had his service dog with him. Any support that can be given, especially to veterans who struggle with depression, with suicidal thoughts, with mental health ailments, love on them. Get them help if you can. Give it to them if you can. If not, find someone who can. Be a resource. If you can't be a help, be a resource. Do whatever you can, because right now, the mental health crisis and post lockdowns and everything, we're really seeing some of the damage that was done. People being isolated like that. It's frightening, but it's something I believe can be overcome. But it's going to take a concentrated effort. Everyone doing their part. Everyone doing that one little thing, right? Just like a million snowflakes come together to make a snowball. If we all do one thing, if we all do something, contribute time or money, hand out information, be an ear to listen or a shoulder to lean on, it will lessen and decrease this problem, hopefully to the point where we might be able to turn it around. One day, maybe. Anyway, this video has gotten long enough. I just wanted to share my thoughts, my observations on this subject. It is something that is important to me. I do apologize it took me this long to put this together and to finally sit down and record this and to actually put it out there, but I had my own things that I was going through, and I just needed to stop and focus on me for a bit and just decompress. I've been able to do that, and I'm back at it now. There will be a third video this weekend. I'm going to say Friday, that I'm going to do. Either Friday or Saturday, I'm going to have my quick and dirty review and thoughts on Cowboy Bebop on Netflix. A lot of people have already come out and said what they're going to say about that, and I don't necessarily disagree with a lot of them, but I think some of them did kind of miss some stuff. But me being a pragmatic optimist, I mean, the glass is always half full. I mean, we got a live-action Cowboy Bebop. I'm happy enough in that. There are things I wish they'd done differently, things I wish they'd done better, all that other stuff, but that's for a whole other video, guys. Anyway, good night. Be good to each other. Taxation theft, don't lie. That way you don't have to remember anything and all that good stuff. I hope you guys enjoy it. I enjoyed being here. I enjoyed cranking out the content. I do hope you guys stay tuned. And yes, there will be a compilation video coming. I'm going to say probably, if not the end of this month, then the start of next. This is January, and so it'll either be the end of January or the 1st of February. I will have a compilation video up and going where you can see some of the cuts, the clips and cuts that didn't make the cut last video, as well as some new ones. And probably with the number of clips I actually was looking at in my library right now that I need to go through and edit, it's probably going to be 2 videos. 2 for 1 special. Anyway, I will also have some other commentary videos on just stuff and just sharing my thoughts that will be following in the following month. And of course, there will be blog posts here by the end of this month and other things as well. For whatever reason, the links in the last video for stuff weren't working. I'm not even going to bother with this video, but there will. You goofy butt. Klutzy. I think I'm going to have me a kitty cat cap. You don't calm yourself. You think I'm kidding? This knife's dull. I couldn't cut butter with it down. Or could I? Anyway. It's been an interesting day. Interesting year already. But anyway, guys, be good to each other. Be safe. Peace.